And what I'd like to do in this quick time period this morning is entertain you a little bit and maybe inform you just a bit, and then intrigue you, hopefully, to ask me some questions. I'll share some simple marketing guidelines. I'll share my opinions on some strong marketing things that happened in my career and my involvement. But what I really want you to take away, and there's 2 or 3 things I'd like you to take away, is if I'm from Chillicothe, and I am, and I could have this kind of career and impact that I did, and I look like a bank teller, let's be honest. I mean, you're not looking at a stunningly attractive man. Okay. I said this at dinner to the dean last night. He said, well, that's true. I said, whoa. I'll do the jokes. But I'm not. I mean, I'm not some big athlete. I've got an average IQ. But to get honored by CHS and speak in front of you is a pretty big deal to me. All right, so here I am. I'm from Chillicothe. My dad died in Christmas of 1963. He was in a class of 40 from Chillicothe, and we moved here. So my mom graduated in 40. I had 4 aunts, 3 uncles, 2 brothers, and a brother-in-law, all graduated from CHS. I graduated in class of 66, which was the only freshman class at the then new high school, okay? 333 kids graduated the year. I graduated 167th in my class. So we're not talking to any Rhodes Scholar here, okay? I worked at the Dairy Queen on High Street my junior year. I worked at Central Pharmacy my senior year. Every Saturday night I went to Aders Lake. I danced, as they used to say, my ass off. I thought I had some tremendous moves. I have a jukebox in my house. I still think I've got the moves. Yeah, I played drums for VK and the Vagabonds. We had 4 songs. We played them over and over, okay? We opened the new YMCA. Big deal. I worked at the Mead every summer. I went to the University of Kentucky. It took me 6 years. You had to have a 2-1 cum to graduate. I had a 2.12. I had 12 of the best friends that anybody on this planet could have right here in Chillicothe. They went to med school, Vietnam, prison, weddings, AA, reunions. They were everything to me. And in my opinion, they were part of my upbringing. They made me, good or bad, funny or not, with this average IQ and average looks, they made me. I love Chillicothe. My biggest question then was, why do I have to leave? I had it made. But I did have to leave. I had to grow up. So I met Jane. She's the adult. Her family moved here. They were a big deal. They moved here with wherever. We got married at a ripe old age of 21. Excuse me. Walnut Street Methodist Church. Her dad was real excited we got married. First 7 years I was married, he called me Larry. Okay? And everybody thought that was funny, but he didn't. So it was time for me to get a career. And a big deal then was to get a job where you had to wear a tie. So that meant you were on your way and be responsible. So I got a job, and here I'm building my story now. I got a job with the Gillette Company, which was huge for me because they had a professional sales training program. We actually went to Chicago and stayed at the Merchandise Mart for a week or 10 days. I had one suit. It was a green cricketer suit. I wore it every day, and with pride. But when I was with Gillette, I learned how to read people professionally, how to be rejected, how to have perseverance, resilience, the value of patience. Everything's not right now, and unfortunately, everything is not about me all the time. So I did this for a couple of years, and I got promoted to the home office, and we moved to Boston as a writer, which made no sense. But here's what I took away from Gillette when I look back at this thing. They sponsored the Miss America contest every year, which just blew me away. And they took this picture of Miss America, and they put it on point of sale next to our products, and our sales went through the roof. Well, being from Chillicothe with this average IQ, I mean, this is just like, wow, is this smart or what? And then they sent Miss America to work with sales reps all around the United States. They sent her to me in Indianapolis. It's like, that's right, me and Becky King riding around Naptown looking at displays. That's it, me and Miss America. Blew me away. But I kept that in the back of my mind, that display and that association, and I joined the Miller Brewing Company, which sounds pretty cool. I sent out resumes. I was begging to go to work for the Miller Brewing Company, and I had like 5 interviews, and they finally said, yeah, okay, fine. Here's why I wanted to join them. They had just launched light beer from Miller, which is what it was called. They launched it in 1974, and I went to the Miller Brewing Company in 1975. And in 8 months, the Miller Brewing Company completely turned the entire brewing industry upside down, and that's a fact. I mean, it went from like 1,200 breweries to like 14 breweries, and this guy, big Irish guy named John Murphy, ran the Miller Brewing Company, and he kept a floor mat of the Anheuser-Busch Budweiser logo underneath his feet at his desk. And every day he'd get up and he'd wipe his feet on that Budweiser logo and say, let's go kick some ass. I mean, I love this guy, okay? And like Forrest, I was buried in the weeds at the time. I mean, they had 100,000 employees, and I was like number 96,008. But they hired these ex-notable famous athletes to launch their product, and it was a simple proposition. Great taste, less filling. And then they'd have 2 guys argue, do you like this because it's great taste, or do you like it because you can drink a lot more? And it was really, really funny. And these guys that had played and were big names, they did their first reunion commercial where they brought in like 20 of these guys. So I said to Miller, I was always running around like that little dog around that bulldog, like, what do you think, what do you think, what do you think, what do you think? Shut up. So I said, you need to let me convince you to do a sweepstakes where anybody, and I'm thinking from Chillicothe, and I always talked about Chillicothe. Nobody ever, Chilla what? You know what I'm talking about. Chilla who? I said, let me do this sweepstakes. Win a chance to be in a light beer commercial. Hundreds of thousands of entries. Blew the walls off. We got these huge displays. So I went to the photo shoot where all these famous guys are, mostly too young to remember them, but I was in awe. They were just like they were from Chillicothe. These guys were unbelievably funny. Sit and close a bar, drink, smoke, tell stories, and get paid. This is the greatest job on the planet. I cried now thinking about it. So everybody thought now suddenly said, who is that guy from Vanderker or whatever his name is from Chilla something? This is a huge promotion. He said, what else you got? I said, look, what you need to do is hire these guys as spokespepeople for the brewery and let them go out and we'll put a whole program together. I'll run it. And I had the time. And I said, you know, and they'll go to like the Elks Club in Chillicothe or all around, you know. Program went through the roof. Ben Davidson, you guys probably don't remember him, but he thinks we named our son Ben after him. He was an Oakland Raider, he was a Pro Bowler. He told me in 1 year at the Miller Brewing Company being a spokesperson, he made more money than his entire NFL career. This guy, and I became really good friends with Deacon Jones, which I'll get to in a second. But the marketing campaign, which stuck in my head. And remember, I had this whole idea about take these guys and put them on a point of sale because of Miss America. And then when Miss America came and rode around with me in Indianapolis, we just kind of hung out, that was my idea to like, let's take these guys and put them in small town communities. So I'm not a genius, but I could see what was working. So their marketing proposition was simple. Great taste, less filling. Try it. You're going to like it. The invitation was out there. So it was perfect. So my career took off. Suddenly, Vanderker from Chilla something was Gary Von Kennel from Chillicothe. I'm getting better looking as the months go by. People are starting to wonder, like, have we got a genius here? Well, I'm thinking they do. So here's my next big idea. And like, I'm on a roll now. I said, let's have the greatest, because I'm a sports guy, all-time Yankees sweepstake. And every time you do something in marketing, somebody's going to say no. So everybody had the reason they say no. I said, look, let me meet with George Steinbrenner. So they set it up. WPIX set it up. So Gary goes to New York City, sits in Steinbrenner's office, me and George, okay? I said, George, what do you think? He says, well, everybody else is going to have to leave, but you and me. He said, where are you from? Are you from the Bronx? He says, you're a pushy little bastard. I said, I'm 5'8", and I'm better looking than I was a year ago. So he tells everybody to leave, because when you have the beer, it's kind of sometimes illegal, but it wasn't. He said, we'll do this. Here's how good this thing was. The two guys announcing the Yankees, now this is back in the 70s, the announcers, doesn't matter who they are, got in an argument as to whether Yogi Berra or Thurman Munson were a better catcher and should have been in the all-time Yankee team. This thing heated up. They ran out of ballots in the state of New York. They called the Miller Brewing Company and said, we're going to pull your license in the state of New York to sell beer if you don't get more ballots. I drove a truck from Chicago Printer to New York crying, this is my job. You know, this is, so it was huge. So then I said, I'll get off this, but I get excited. Let's do this with the Celtics. Did the same thing with the Boston Celtics. All-time greatest Celtics team. So I'm sitting with Red Auerbach, me and Red, talking about Becky King and some of the things we hitters know. I swear to God, he says, where are you from? I said, Chillicothe, Ohio. So they announce the all-time greatest Celtics team, and they bring them to Boston Garden. And the last person they introduce is Gary Vanderker from Chillicothe, Ohio. So I'm out there giving this award. So I'm on fire. You can't touch me with a grenade. So I leave the Miller Brewing Company to start target marketing with a guy named David Deacon Jones, 12 times All-Pro, fearsome foursome. He's done like 40 commercials. The funniest guy you'll ever meet. He's like 6'6", 300 pounds of energy. It was a great idea. The company lasted about an hour. Everything was good except you couldn't find Deacon. So we had this Hispanic lady who was really a Jewish lady from New York, but it just didn't work. So now if this were a movie, this would be that moment in the movie. Like, what's going to happen? Because now I'm not tall anymore. I'm not that good looking. So I'm unemployed for a while, and I get this position with an agency in Dallas. This will get interesting again, okay? After a couple of months, perseverance, anguish, all these big words, Tracy Locke Advertising needed a sales promotion pro, which is what I was called at that time, in order to win the Pepsi business nationally. The guy who ran the Pepsi business was a guy named Roger Enrico, told the guy who ran Tracy Locke, you get a sales promotion guy, I'll give you, you won't even have to pitch. I'll give it to you. He was on fire. Pepsi was on fire because they just did this thing called the Pepsi Challenge. Which tastes better, Pepsi or Coke? Do any of you remember they had these little booths? They televised it. Well, here's a clue. Pepsi always tastes better because they had more sugar. And you only got one sip. So everybody was taking one sip. Oh, my God. So Enrico wanted to do this, explode this program all across the United States. So I did, and we opened up this subsidiary, and we were on a roll. And I got to know this Roger Enrico just from like, is that Roger? And later became a very good friend of mine. And he finally, I never lied to you, finally had this big meeting, and I had this big idea, and he says, swear to God, he says, where are you from? I said, I'm from Chillicothe, Ohio. If my wife would let me bring my phone in, you could call these people and only ask one question, where's Gary Von Kennel from? They'd say, oh my God. Chillicothe. So Roger then hired Michael Jackson. I got involved in that from a distance, but I'm getting closer, okay? And his whole approach to marketing was make it simple, make it invitational, make it incredibly creative, and then just as John Murphy at the Miller Brewing Company, Roger Enrico was a leader. He made decisions and he demanded aggressive culture. It was terrific. So we got that business November of 1981. I'm sitting at the Dallas airport and I was asked to fill out a card to join the American Airlines awards program. A Dallas agency created the first continuity program in the history of the United States. A true analytical, backed by computers program. So I joined it. And I got to know the guys. And I was just intrigued, like, how can you do this? And that program just went through the roof. Today, you can't do anything with the hotel you're in. Everything is saving points, Kroger cards. I got more affinity cards than I got cents. So I was totally blown away by that. So in 5 years, I learned how to sell with the Gillette company. I was involved with the brewing industry and the Miller Lite campaign. I started an agency that failed. I worked in the Cola Wars, Pepsi Challenge, Michael Jackson. Great leaders on all of these. Warlike culture. I mean, it was like move up or move out. You know, do something big or get out of here. I took my Gillette sales training, power marketing from Miller, American Airlines, Advantage Learning, and the Cola Wars. And I started my own agency with Jane. And this was great for 13 years. Her ground rules were simple. You cannot sign a contract. You cannot sign a check. You cannot go to the airport unless I approve it. If you talk about business at the house, you're done. So, okay. So we had a great little agency for 13 years. We had some international clients. We got back with Miller and California Cooler and PepsiCo Foods International. So in 1999, is this any good so far? Are we doing all right? All right, so in 1999, I get a call from Omnicom, this huge, largest holding company in the United States. It's kind of indirectly. How would you like to come back to Tracy Locke, and run it? I said, are you kidding me? That'd be the easiest money ever made. I said, well, let me look. I can do this. I've got time. And so we sold our agency, and I became the CEO of Tracy Locke. And it wasn't a lot of fun. But here's where I took all these principles. I talked to everybody. I talked to everybody. We had like 3 or 4 offices across the United States. I talked to the receptionist. I talked to the head people. I talked to the people who thought they were the most important people. At the same time, I would go and talk to every client. And I would say, what are we doing wrong? What can we do better? Hey, I'm new. Give me 30 days. What a mess. Probably the biggest mistake I ever made. First year was a disaster. I tried to quit because you lied to me. Side note, everybody lies. Okay, so I didn't know that. So they said, yeah, you can quit, but you have to give us back all the money. I said, well, I don't want to quit right now. So after the first year, I figured it out, and then this thing zoomed. And revenue went from 63 to 87, and profits tripled, and I had this lady working with me, became one of the nicest and best places to work in Dallas. I mean, it was just great. So I said, now I'm done. And the guy who runs Omnicom was not a very nice guy. Said, go run this thing in LA. I said, okay. Got any more money? And he said, yeah. And he said, we'll give you an apartment in LA. I said, okay. I said, hey, Jane, you want to come? She says, yeah, a little bit. So go to LA, apply the same principles, and it worked. Now I'm getting that feeling again. I'm getting taller, getting better looking, okay? So I say to the head guy, who I still don't like, what else you got? So he says, Rap Collins, USA. It's a little bit harder. It's a little bit more people with PhDs, apply the same principles. There are too many chiefs. Everybody talked too much. And it worked. And I had an office in New York, in Dallas. I'm flying all the time. And I say to Jane, hey, you want to go to New York? Not so much. So, okay. So then I get this worldwide position, and now you can't touch me with a grenade. Are you kidding me? I have an apartment in London. Yes, I do. and I'm just too good, and things are just too sweet, and I'm flying all the time. So I said, hey, Jane, you want to come to London? Mm-mm. Okay, do you want to go here with it? Mm-mm. And it was in my contract, she'd go anywhere. So by 2008, I was cooked. I had 8 million miles with American Airlines. This is in 2008. I had 2 million miles with a combination of 4 other airlines. Jane said, I'm not traveling with you. I was gone every week. The dog didn't know me. So I resigned, I retired, I quit. I went home and I was done, kind of. So I sat in my den. I had 3 phone lines, none rang. I used to get 120 emails a day. Now I'm getting spam and Viagra ads. You know, it's like, hey, you want to walk the dog? Yeah, I'd love to walk the dog. The dog didn't like me. Didn't want to walk with strangers. So I'm going to hang with Jane. Jane says to me, I'll never forget this. I asked her one time, she said, hey, I'm going to go get a manicure and a pedicure. I said, why? Boy, a finger right in my face. Let me just tell you, you know, hang with me, I'd rather hang you. You've got to get out of here and find something to do. Okay, so I'm no longer a fix-it guy. I'm no longer the hammer. I don't get automatically upgraded to first class. My jokes are no longer funny. I'm no longer tall. My time is no longer valuable. So what have I become at age 59? Very wise, very patient, suddenly. So through friends and former employees, and I hate every one of these words, but this is what I became. I became a coach. So my rules were, I'm not going to call anybody. And Jane says, especially don't call these young ladies that are calling you. It's creepy. Okay, I don't call, text, email anybody, but I take anybody's call. So suddenly I've got like 25 people, and they're not just young. They're like CEOs that used to work with me, because I never use that expression, work for me. You work with me, we work for a company. So they're asking my opinion, they're asking my advice, they're asking for a connection. Suddenly my very direct, offensively foul language approach is a breath of fresh air. So I became a kind of a CEO panelist at the University of Virginia, which is a trip. Sometime, if we get some time, I'll tell you about that. These people are really smart at UVA, really smart. Just ask them, okay? Okay, so I'm at part 3. We still together? All right, so here we go. Small business tips. Whew. I get killed every time I sit down, and I did a lot of small companies in that when I retired, I did some work with a private equity company, and there was a company called Heelys where they have these heels in the shoes of tennis shoes. So they asked me to come in as a friend and restructure the management and the marketing direction, and I did, and I had some fun doing that. And then I did a bunch of smaller things just as, you know, and I don't charge anything. I don't want any money. I kind of enjoy this. So if you run a small business, first question you need to ask is, how much freedom do you have? And be honest, how much freedom do you really have? Because there's always a franchise rules or regulations, and you got to play by the rules and regulations. What are the corporate structure guidelines? You might be an intuitively or a instructioned marketer, but you still have to play by the rules the corporation has put in place. And words that scare me, like, we have a marketing template. Oh, God. You know, Jesus, here we go. All right. And then the big question is, well, what's your pricing latitude? Like when I'm working with these people, and I'm always real friendly, and I don't use bad language yet. And so, could you do this or could you do that? Well, if you really have franchise rules or corporate guidelines or marketing templates or pricing structure, my first thing I'd say to you is know what you can do and know what you cannot do, so you don't have a stroke or you don't get shot. The king of all tips is simplicity rules. Oh, one of the problems when you're in marketing is that everybody thinks they're in marketing. I kid you not. Watch a TV commercial and listen to everybody. That sucks. That's okay. Who are you? You know, that really drives the message. Based on what? So everybody's an expert. So if you are in charge of marketing at a small business thing, you got a tough problem. It's not like you repair air conditioners, okay, where there are some technical rules. This is a free-spirited conversation in most instances. So you got to be simple. Number one, you got to know exactly what your business does. And then if you can say it clearly in 7 words or less, you're on the right road. For instance, our restaurant serves the best Italian food. Boom. That's what your business does. I know you're thinking like we do so much more, but the world is a simple place. And consumers don't have time to fall in love with you. We solve heating and air conditioning problems over and out. Pretty direct. This is the core of your business, so know what your core is. Number 2, know who your true and bullseye consumer or customer is. You know, you'll hear this a lot. 80% of the business is done by 20% of the people. Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's 90% are done by 10%. Whoever that core customer is, be careful. You're looking to add on to that core customer, but don't leave or confuse that core customer because you won't get them back. Because people just don't have time for you today, just as you as consumers don't have time. This is really important. Know your true, honest point of difference. This is your business, okay? This is your customer. Now, what is your true point of difference? As soon as I say this, you're going to say, yeah, all of them. No. Whatever your point of difference is, protect it, honor it, and don't dilute it. Is it price? Is that why you're in business? Is it quality? Is it convenience? Is it innovation? Is it inventory? Is it legacy? Like Jerry's Pizza? 50 years ago, somebody would say, where's the best pizza in Chillicothe? It was Jerry's Pizza. Well, I asked somebody last night, I said, where's the best pizza? Jerry's Pizza. Wow, okay? So don't dilute your true point of difference. Don't even start with, well, yeah, we have the best price, but we protect our quality and come see our location because it's our inventory. It's like, are you kidding me? Who are you talking to? Probably the owner who's going, yeah, I believe that. That's not working. Okay. This one's critical. And this one is hard to do. Hire a professional marketing person. Experience and knowledge counts. If it's a small business, they can multitask. They can do other things. Hire a professional, experienced marketing person. That does not mean that cute little girl that just got out of OU with that marketing degree. God bless her, okay? You've got to get somebody who's been there and done that, who knows the value of a dollar, knows how to protect the marketing principles and the structure and the brand that's your business. They're not everywhere, but there's a bunch of them out there. It's just like you like to eat, but you're not a professional chef. But yet if you run a small business, you'll say, you know, I got marketing. I did this thing in Charlottesville with this company. I won't go there. But I knew about halfway in, I had these UVA students, and they're really smart. I thought, boy, this isn't going to work. Because the guy who ran sales couldn't wait for me to shut up to tell me that since he worked in a design studio in New York City when he was 25 and he's 50, he pretty much knew everything he needed to know about marketing. I said, well, God bless you. Not a good idea. You value money, but you're not a CPA. So if you're not a true marketing person, try to get one if you can. Okay, number 6, and probably the most important. Of all the advertising tools and mediums and however you want to call it, the most important one is the website. It's just the most important marketing tool you have. And it's the most abused marketing tool. Because usually you end up hiring some young guy or gal to come in and develop your website. And they are just cool, and they have that pounding music, and they like a lot of colors, and they like a lot of flash. They said, we're going to make your thing just as cool. You don't need cool. You need functional. You don't want your customers to say, wait a minute, I cannot go out with you. I've got to get on this heating and air website. Oh my God, that's what I'm doing tonight. But yet, everybody's website is just like, woof. What you need in a website, in my opinion. Simple statement. Here we go again. Sounds familiar. What your company does. Simple. We do heating and air conditioning better than anybody. Referrals and testimonials. Number 2. And you got to constantly update these things. And a lot of you are sitting there saying, yeah, I know all of this. Okay. Word of mouth has always been just like Jerry's Pizza 50 years ago. It's still the same, but people, boom, get to your website. What do you do? Does anybody agree? Number 3, and nobody does this, drives Jane crazy. What are your hours of operation? It's buried. We're open from 10 to 5, except on Thursdays or Saturdays when I want my problem solved right now. So what are your hours of operations? And I know this is sacrilegious. What's your phone number? Because I need this. I got a pump that's blowing up in the kitchen. I don't. So business rankings, number 4. How long you've been around. It's important. Your brand's positioning statement, number 5. This is all simple. Just like if you were to say, who is Just Do It or King of Beers or I'm Loving It, you know who those people are. Well, you need one for your company. Simple brand statement. Number 6, who's the face of the business? A tiny bio. People like to do business with people even when they're on the website. Like, who runs this place? Especially in Chillicothe. Do I know him? Is there a guy named Herlihy here? You know, my grandmother was like best friends with Myrtle Herlihy. Wow. See, you can't beat that. So, and I just kind of hit me. So a small bio on who runs the place. Not 7 pages, not everybody, but it's sort of like who just from my Miller days, John Murphy, or from Roger and Rico, who's running this thing, man or woman? Okay, a couple other thoughts. Employees in a small business, they're everything. Now, you don't think so after a while because they're just so commonplace and so part of the structure. Everybody knows who works there. They are your brand when they're walking around this community. We were at the country club last night. It was funny. There is the table, and there was. And that's the power table. I don't know who these people were. I saw Jackie Burno. You can call him Doctor or Jack. He's Jackie to me. He was my neighbor. And there's Jackie Burno at a power table, and he's a doctor, and I get it. And that's important because he represents that hospital, or he represents the medical. So who works with you at your place and who runs the place, absolutely incredible. Roger and Rico, from the guy I talked about at Pepsi, and this is 25 years ago. His salary, $1 a year. Everybody knew that. And the salary they were going to pay him, he put into an employee scholarship fund. Jerry Jones, the owner of the Cowboys, we lived in Dallas forever. It's not working as the face of that brand, or, because women can't stand him. And they shouldn't. What a clown. And he's running this marketing thing. Who do you think runs the budget of every household? And Jane says, write this down. You're never going to that stadium. And I never have been. Okay. Things that I avoid. Multi-sponsorships. You look at these shirts. There's a million logos and a million names, and they're really nice, and I get it, but they don't help me. So I don't like multi-sponsorships. I like taking care of my business. Number 2, it's redundant. Uncle Bob is in charge of marketing. And that's what you get. God, we went to Phillips 66 in Bartlesville, Oklahoma one time to pitch to the guy who was in charge of marketing. And Phillips 66 at that time, guess, they could care less about marketing. And the reason you knew it is when you went in there, this guy, we had to wake him up. Seriously. Hello? You know, it's like, he was in charge of marketing because they didn't care. Complicated websites, it's a tool and it's not an entertainment destination. Multi-message marketing, which is what you see a lot of. We have the best sushi at my Mexican restaurant, and it's half off. Yes. All right. Things that I endorse, promote, or invest in. Number one, a straightforward business proposition with a clear point of difference, simple and effective marketing, hands-on and clearly focused leadership. Okay, I'm heading down the stretch here. So, what about today? What about Chillicothe? What would I do if I were back in Chillicothe as a marketer? Well, first of all, I'd be divorced. And she'd get the dog. Okay. So I'd be this rather attractive guy running around. And my three things I'd want to re-energize, I'd want to renew, and I'd want to rediscover. I pull into Chillicothe every time I drive around, it just kills me. I love this town. What's going on here, folks? So, as a marketer, I would jump all over the Chillicothe Country Club. Are you kidding me? It's an icon. My grandmother managed that place for like 30 years. Every time I came home from Chillicothe, we went up to the country club to see all my relatives. The cooks, the bartenders, they were all like aunts and uncles to me. It's screaming for a redo. This city is desperate for a upscale but hometown white tablecloth restaurant. This is a big idea. I'd bring in a New York ad agency. And before I brought them in, I would talk to businesses. Now you got to talk to the hospital, you got to talk to OU, and I'm sure there's somebody else that's big. It's all changed. But I said, look, let's bring in somebody that can, in a forum, and we pay them, but we'll get a deal, who can really talk about what is effective social media. I don't have time to go there. I'm involved. I'm on the board of a social media company, social marketing in Dallas. Scary. And what is the current situation for new media strategies, social media, marketing and management, insights, emerging markets, and today's demographics? Okay? Now, this guy or this lady is not going to come from this agency just because they want to come see Chillicothe. So we'd have to do a little work. We'd have to get some companies to exclusively say, hey, I'm in, I want to be involved in this. Okay? So maybe it's one restaurant, or it's the Chamber of Commerce, or one home exterior, grooming, whatever. We'll do like the Olympics. And then everybody throw a little money in. So I say to the agency, we'll pay you to come and do this. Now, why would the agency want to do this? Because there's business and there's marketing business in Chillicothe. In some instances, they just don't know it. So we have to do a little work. So we upgrade Chillicothe's marketing, small business definition of marketing, and make it real time. And we tie in with New York, which are slick, good-looking, big word talking people. I think that's a big idea. The Chillicothe Paints, are they still here, the baseball team? Whew. Maybe it's old news and old school, but I think it's huge. And I think on this redo, re-energize, and rediscover, I got in this conversation with a friend of mine who said, hey, do you want to be on this board? And I said, no. He said, well, you get to meet Joe Morgan. I said, well, I'd love to meet Joe Morgan. I'm not calling him. Yeah, too cool. But, so he called me. So Joe Morgan and I get in this conversation. We talk like 3 times a week for like 6 months. We get in this wine deal together. And I'm dying because through him, I have dinner with Pete Rose. That's a trip, okay? And he knows all of these guys that played professional baseball. It's starting to remind me of Miller Lite. And I know there's a connection where we could do some things with the Chillicothe paints and bring in and have a old-timers all-star game. The fact that you already have that team here, and oh, it's huge. Tecumseh, okay. 25 years ago, we brought our kids, they cried, some guy rode a horse. It's still a huge deal, and it's under that rediscover, renew. I just think it's awesome. Marketing for a hospital, I guess, is the largest employer. That's a tough proposition because everybody goes to the hospital when they're sick. So what are you trying to do? You know, increase traffic? You know. But what kind of hospital do you have? And it makes me think of the guy who started Southwest Airlines, another Dallas guy, Herb Kelleher. He's an attorney, has a drinking problem, and he'll tell you he has a drinking problem. He doesn't care. Reminds me of Chillicothe. Funny guy. So he starts an airline, and his whole proposition is, just like a hospital, you know, you got to go. So there's no difference in airlines. There's going to be a difference in mine. I'm going to care about everybody gets on the plane. I'm only going to serve them peanuts. And everybody who works at Southwest Airlines, they're going to love where they work. And I'm going to give them an opportunity, and sometimes I'm going to give them ownership in a company. All these years with airlines going bankrupt and baggage fees, every quarter profitable. Herb Kelleher, amazing guy. So quick story, we go to this favorite restaurant in Dallas, and there he is sitting at the bar. Actually, he's sitting at a table smoking. It's a non-smoking restaurant. So I say to Danny, the bartender, I said, hey, send Herb Kelleher a drink. On me, remember, big time. He says, well, he said, he has so many drinks waiting, he's really not going to be too excited about you buying him a drink. So Herb's sitting about where you're sitting. He looks at me and says, but nobody's buying my dinner. So I said to Herb, you're right. I ain't buying your dinner. Okay. Simple proposition in your marketing, always have an invitation and always have leadership. So, Forrest Gump. I'm not a master, but I was there with Miller Lite. I mean, I was really there. I was there in the Cola Wars. Had the Sergio Zeman who introduced New Coke. I had dinner at his house the night they introduced it. I don't know if he'd remember. My Gillette, Becky King, I know she doesn't go around telling people when she was Miss America, she rode around with me. I was in New York in 9/11. Forrest Gump leaves Chillicothe and has these wonderful experiences. And those are my tips. And so somebody said, can you go back? Hey, I never left. I just gained a lot of weight. Not any better looking, and I'm not any taller. So, how'd I do? Anybody have any questions? Would any? Yes, sir.
With your all your areas of achievements, so which one would you say that you best?
In the marketing thing?
Yeah.
I think when I went back to Tracy Locke, that first company from Omnicom, there were 4. They, and I was emotionally involved. I really liked that company. You can tell I'm an emotional guy. And they were so dead that I thought, not only are they going to continue to die, but they're going to take me with them. And then when it turned around, I think that was, I mean, I had bigger companies and you know, more exciting things that were said about me, but that was the one for me. Yes, ma'am.
How do you get people excited about doing a new campaign and get them on board? Because, like you said, they don't know it, right?
Yeah.
So they don't want to listen.
Well, there's a couple of things. And the first thing to get somebody excited about a campaign that you have to understand, at least I did, and it took me a while, is every campaign has to have a champion. Has to have. Somebody has to be known as, Hey, that's Gary's campaign. And then the reaction is, oh, geez, oh, God. All right, what? What do we have to do? Because they know I'm going to beat and pound and hound. Or it's Jane's campaign. Oh, it's just going to be really smart. It's going to be really nice. It's going to be intellectual. It might really work. You have to have a champion. The first thing I would do as a champion is I would get a little research working. And you don't have to have tons of proven formula research. You just have to, especially with the internet, talk to 50 customers of yours that you can say represent 5 categories, so 10 in each. And then that supports your campaign. And make sure that you can't get beat financially, because what usually kills a campaign, in my opinion, is we can't afford it. It won't work. You don't have enough research. Or we keep delaying the meetings and delaying the decisions, and you'll change your mind. You won't be a true champion. Now, that's a pretty simple answer, okay? But that approach probably worked for me 90% of the time, until I got to power. Boy, did I love that power, too. Man, I kid you not. Whew. First time I realized they're waiting for me to say yes or no. Liked it.
How do people get going, young people that just out of OU with a marketing degree or something? How do they get their career going?
The reason I chat with UVA students and all these other young people is exactly that point. And what happened is, I have 2 sons. One I call a prince. He's perfect. He went to Kenyon College. He played sports, all A's. If he walked in here, he'd say, good-looking guy, all right? I have another son. I love him, too. He owns my heart. But the prince goes to Kenyon, comes home, and he's going to go interview. So I just said, I happen to be home, well, let's just do a mock interview just for a second. Just humor me. I'm your old man. I paid for everything. Let me just ask you a few questions. Terrible. Terrible. I had a stroke. I said to Jane, I said, he doesn't know how to interview. She said, well, yeah, he does. He's perfect. I said, he might be. But he's not going to get a job. So what I do at UVA and other places is I meet with probably students at 20 or 25, and I tell them 5 or 6 things that's going to happen to them when they go looking for a job or when they get their first job. And if I could do it on TV and if anybody would listen, it would be the best half an hour, kids, because people don't know how to get a job. They don't know how tough it is. They don't know how to interview. Everybody here would say, what's your resume look like? Nobody reads resumes. It's who you know. You get one shot. It's just, it is an amazing problem. But it's fixable. And part of the fix, humbly stated, is somebody like me and others like me coming back and saying, this is exactly what's going to happen. At UVA, I got in this conversation, somebody said, well, you must not have been a big deal. You're not very tall. And I just said, well, watch this. So I brought in like these 3 guys, or 3 people, 2 women and a man. They're all CEOs of major advertising agencies. One is a major position in the world. So they came into this panel in front of 200 students at UVA, and the whole point was, let these people tell you everything that's wrong with you that you have no clue about. How you interview, the resume, how you appear, what your brand looks like when you come to work. It was jaw-dropping. We had a post thing, whatever you call it, let's all go out and have coffee or something. You couldn't beat these kids off with a baseball bat. They followed me home because they need to know this. It's a huge problem. I don't know if that answered your question. Myrtle Hurley. I'll never forget. If I put my email and phone number, would anybody call me or email me?
Absolutely.
Does anybody have a question?
What is it?
I'll tell you. I'm not taking your call. Yes, sir.
Examples of coming into organizations and starting to go around. How did you do that? Was it a guiding philosophy?
Yeah.
Did you just coon out?
Oh, no, God. Thank you. I get to this company, and I could do this tomorrow, and I've done this very quickly. And the first thing I do is I go to, if it's an agency, I go to the clients. I mean, even before I go to the agency to accept the position, I go to the clients. And I get to the top person at the client. I beg, but I get the interview. I get 15 minutes. I say, I don't ask what's right. What's wrong with the company that I'm running now and I'm responsible for? What's wrong? Just tell me 3 things. Make it up. Tell me 3 things. And if I get to 4 clients, and I do because I'm zooming, amazingly, they'll tell me 3 things and they're all the same. It's just simply amazing. Then I get to every management person that I can get to, and if I got the power, it's amazing how they'll be accessible, and I only ask them 3 questions. Hey, what do we do here? How are we doing? What are you doing to make this company better? And I smile like a jack-o'-lantern, because people think I'm going to come in like Genghis Khan or something, you know? So I'm laughing, and I say, you got to answer these questions as quick. Everything's quick. I don't have time. Then I say, okay, I got it. I've talked to the clients. This could be in a total of a week if everything fell, and never does. So these are the problems this agency has. This is the solution that we're going to do. There's just 3 things. We're going to fix these problems. Now, I won't go around the room, and it could be all of y'all if you worked, but some of you don't get it. Some of you think you're more important than the business. Some of you don't believe these are the problems. Some of you want to have meetings, okay? Some of you want to do interviews or surveys. What we're going to do is this. Now, let me promise you, I want you to be here in a year. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. If you don't buy this, you won't be here tomorrow. So the first company, the top 19 people, God, this was awful. Of the top 19 people, and they had offices in Connecticut, Dallas, New York, and someplace else, 17 of them had to go. It was almost a rebellion. It was a terrible year. But I had 3 of them say, not only are you going to fail, you're over your head, the height thing, and you can't do this without me. So I shot them all. They shot themselves the way I look at it. And I promoted from within, because there's always some young person dying to play who just wants to do things for the team, wants to get it right, wants to make a little bit more money, have a little bit more responsibility. We turned it around. It worked. I was still a nice guy. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
In talking about going to the internet or someplace simple to poll your customers and find out, if the response that you get from the top brass is constantly, those are anecdotal, pieces of evidence that you're coming back. How do you convince the manager of your company?
Oh my God.
50 people from several different counties that you have.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying. How do you say that's what they're saying?
This is amazing. So with these UVA students, I go to work. I won't name the company because I really can't pronounce it. It's a heating and air conditioning company in Charlottesville. And it's owned by this old guy who is just a prince, okay? And he absolutely loves me, loves my reputation, loves my style, and he loves these chicks. There's 3, so he thinks this is great. So I said, look, you're going at your business incorrectly. You've made it way too complicated, okay? You've been here for 40 years, you're really successful. I would just say you're first, you're fast, and you're fair. Albemarle Heating and Air. And I would trim this website down, and I said, I would make a woman available to answer your phones, because they have a lot of phones, because women like to talk to women. And I said a bunch of things. I said, we'll go to 50 people, okay? And that's it. We went to 50 different people, not only in Charlottesville, but these young ladies had family in Pennsylvania and other places. Well, the question came in, and this man in Wilmington was dead wrong. And I said, hey, boy, was I wrong. And it is anecdotal. And I said, but these other things, First, Fast, and Fair, I am totally right. They have no clue what you do, and he's on TV all the time. And I said, you're really confusing, and that's what this says. And so this old guy says, he's a nice guy, he says, do you feel comfortable with those 50? I think it was like 70. I said, absolutely. Hey, I don't need 9 people to give me a report that the ship is sinking. Just get the hell off this thing, you know? My feet are wet. So he says, I agree, 100%. So we're going to do all of these things. But the guy who runs sales that was going to take his position, he says, well, can we go to lunch? I said, sure. Boy, he called me everything but nice. He said, when you and your dumbass, you know, we're not doing that. I'm going to run this company. So they never did implement it. But Jane and I are involved in a hydroponic tomato farm in Dallas. And we made the decisions to do certain things on interviews and surveys very much like I just described. Because to me, there's so much of this is intuitive. And you really want to know what you're doing that is incredibly wrong, but you also just want to be directionally right, because it's fluid. And that's the other thing about marketing. It's going to change. That's why if you ever would consider bringing an agency in, I don't even know if they would do it, but I would bet I could make them. You'll learn things that you don't know. That doesn't mean you'll apply them in your business, but the fact that you're a marketer and would know them will make you better, and potentially your company better. Have I gotten any taller standing here?
Gary, where do you talk about finding that marketing person?
Mm-hmm.
And they're out there, they're not hugely abundant, but they're out there.
Yeah.
How do you go about finding them?
This whole world, in my opinion, is who do you know and how did you get there? It certainly has been for me, okay? So you call somebody that's in the agency or marketing company business, and you say, hey, I'm in Chillicothe, Ohio, and I got this small company, or I work for the Ohio University branch, maybe it's not the branch anymore, and I need somebody who has like 5 or 10 years real experience, worked for an agency, and would like to come into a smaller community and have a lot more responsibility. You won't get that sentence finished, and they'll start naming names. Seriously. You call me, I could get them for you. Except I'm getting really old now, and it's just kind of hard to accept. I always feel like I could still swing, but maybe for like one at bat, you know, every other game.